Back in the days when sailing ships were just starting to be popular, they would take on board like cabin boys and young men who wanted to learn how to sail. And there was one young boy who was on a sailing vessel. It was his first trip, and they were trying to get him to go up to the mast, to go all the way up to the crow's nest to look out and see what was ahead. And the boy was real excited, and he got up onto the main mast and started climbing up, and he did great. He got up about 2/3 of the way, and then his arms were getting a little tired, and he stopped, and he looked down, and he got frightened when he saw how high up he was. And he saw the sea and the waves rolling and everything. And the master sailor down on the deck said, "Look to the sky, look to the sky." And so the boy got his wits about him, and he looked back up at the crow's nest, and he kept climbing, and he got up to the crow's nest without any problem. That's much like what happens in our gospel story today. St. Peter gets out of the boat, starts walking on the water, takes his eyes off Jesus, and he starts to sink. The little boy took his eyes off his goal and began to get frightened. And I think many of us in our lives can relate to it, because we may start out as children and stuff being very good and going to church all the time and doing all of the things we're supposed to do. And then at some point, life starts to get in the way. Perhaps in high school, and there's too many temptations, or I want to be popular, or I want to do this and I want to do that, and it kind of gets in the way. I love St. Peter because he's one of those guys that just kind of, what he's thinking comes out of his mouth, and he's just always right there and ready to commit to Jesus, but he's also the first one to stumble. And that's sort of like us too in some ways. You know, we want to be good Christians. We want to be good Catholics, but we stumble. And that's our nature, and that's normal, and it's natural. But we have to keep getting up. We have to keep our eyes on the goal, keep our eyes on Jesus, and move forward. There was a young man who has had the life pretty much like I was describing, and then he got in college, and all the stuff in college was so much of a distraction. He started skipping Mass now and then then he started partying a little bit more, and he got into a fraternity and all those kind of things. And then one night, he's driving on a mountain road and has an accident, just himself, nobody else, runs off the road, nobody else around, and he laid in that crashed car for an hour and a half, waiting for help, thinking that he was never going to live. And so he started to pray. And he said, "God, whatever you want from me, whatever you want from me." And he got a sense of peace that he never had before. And he thought to himself, isn't it a shame it took this to bring me to the point of finding that peace? Well, thankfully, he recovered. Somebody found him. They took him to the hospital, and after a couple months, he recovered, and he stayed committed to the Lord. He was elected for head of the house for his fraternity in his sophomore year in college. And again, life is going well, and then he starts to get distracted and kind of loses sight of his goals. And once again, he finds himself skipping church every now and then, skipping prayers, not doing this, not doing that. Until he gets married, he has his own children, and it didn't turn out like he thought. He didn't love his job in the way he thought he would. And all those different kinds of things. And as he reflected back one night, he realized again he took his eyes off Jesus. I think each and every one of us, as we sit here or stand here tonight, can look back at our lives and we can point out times that maybe our eyes weren't quite right on the goal, that we had lost sight of Jesus in our lives. Or if we didn't lose sight, it got kind of cloudy, or our vision wasn't so clear or so good. That's what our gospel asks us to think about tonight. Where are each and every one of us in our journey with Jesus? Do we have our goals and our vision firmly set on the Lord and what the Lord is asking for from us? Every day, God invites us into deeper relationship. Sometimes we hear it, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we purposefully ignore it. But our invitation tonight from the Lord puts out his hand and he says, come on. You can walk on the water. Have faith in me. Trust that I know what's best for you. God doesn't care about our money or any of that. What he does care about is our will, and turning our will over to God so that God can work in and through us and change this world and make his kingdom here among us right now in this moment. That's the invitation to each and every one of us as a Catholic, to allow the Lord to overcome us completely and to do his will, not our own. We're not going to be perfect at it, but we have to keep looking to Jesus. We have to keep looking to the sky. God bless you.